Yeah, that's a good amount of understeer. Ladies and gentlemen, special treat today. We're comparing the second generation. This is a 2018 Honda HR-V LX all-wheel drive compared to the brand new 2023 third generation Honda HR-V, also LX trim, all-wheel drive. And special thanks to Findlay Honda here in Centennial Hills for making this video possible. Show them some love on Instagram and on their website. Links down in the description. Exterior wise, a lot of big differences. This car is actually based on the Honda Fit, whereas the new HR-V is based on the Honda Civic. And everyone has different preferences when it comes to style, but I think that the new one is a very handsome and much needed upgrade. Looks much more modern, very minimalist and very smooth in the front, departing from that previously very geometric and somewhat overstyled prior design language that Hondas have had. Now let's see how this first generation drives, and then we'll hop into the second gen. First impressions, this is obviously more in line with the previous generation of most Hondas in terms of the interior space. You have this really small screen for the infotainment. This one doesn't even have climate control, actually. This is all manual HVAC. And you know, a lot of hard plastics. You're not fooling anyone here. This is a cheap, budget, subcompact CUV. And with that being said, let's take it for a spin. We have analog gauges, analog speed, analog tach, and digital fuel, and some other small things over there, like your MPG and such. We have color changing ring around the speedometer, which my first impression is that it's a little bit distracting, but I guess if you're trying to hypermile, maximize that fuel efficiency, then maybe you care about that. Medium weight steering. This actually feels very familiar. This feels like a lot of Hondas that I've driven in the past. I used to really enjoy driving my friend's Honda Fit, actually. They would let me drive their Honda Fit because they didn't like driving, so I would drive us in their car because their car is more practical than mine. And you can tell that this is cut from the same cloth. Even things like the steering feel, the weighting of it, the way that it returns to center with quite a good amount of force. It feels very Honda. And Hondas do tend to have pretty well-balanced inputs. Oh yeah, power! That little 1.8 liter multi-port injection, naturally aspirated four-banger. You're not really wowing anyone with its performance, but then again, you're not really buying this car for its performance. You're buying it for its practicality. I think of this as a raised up, a lifted Honda Fit, more or less. A little bit higher up, a little bit heavier. Ooh, this does not feel very good. There's a lot of like inconsistent resistance changing between these different vent settings. That's not very good. Yeah, very cheap plasticky feel here. The dials have this glossy black texture. Some piano black around here as well. Not the biggest fan of piano black or chrome. Those design choices did not age well, in my opinion. Driving position, as expected in a CUV, very upright, pretty high up. I have put my seat all the way down low. I'm 6'1", mostly in the legs. I have about, let's say, 3 inches above my head, but I feel very upright, seated like I'm in a chair rather than lower sunk down in a car. And a lot of people who are buying these vehicles like that. I wish I could get a little bit lower in my seating position, but granted, I do have a bias in that I like the lower slung feel. Yeah, nice and easy to modulate brakes. I like that. The 2018 Honda Civic I was driving was very grabby with the brakes, and even the steering felt a little bit, it just didn't really match. But all the inputs here, they're consistent. When you have consistent weighting to the steering, consistent weighting to the brake and gas, everything just feels balanced. It's easier to drive the car at ease without needing to really think much about it or be like, oh, I need to be lighter on the brakes and whatnot. It just flows. It becomes background noise, if you will. You can just, focus on your podcast, your conversation with your passengers, whatever else you want to be doing. Yeah, as expected, completely dead steering with no feel at all. Not quite as tight and nimble as a Honda Civic, which makes sense, or a Honda Fit. This car is around 3,000 pounds in this all-wheel drive configuration. You can also get it in front-wheel drive only. And it doesn't handle its weight as well as some other 3,000 pound vehicles, like the Honda Civic, which is also right around 3,000 pounds. Part of that is the higher center of gravity. Part of that could be due to the fact that this is based on the Honda Fit chassis, which is a much lighter car. And when you're adding all this heft, more cushion for the pushing, then it doesn't quite scale up as well. Yeah, completely anemic steering. Engine is also somewhat anemic. Power! Come on, CVT, give me some revs, man. Give me some more revs. And this thing huffs and puffs, and we barely move forward. Oh yeah, look at that cornering. Prowess, the balance. Like redlining, trying to overtake a Subaru Outback that isn't even trying to go fast. See how she corners. Yeah, that's a good amount of understeer. Traction control kicked in there. Definitely does not handle its weight well. I would expect this car to weigh a little bit more than 3,000 pounds. And let's do the audio test, get up to speed here, 75 miles an hour. And cruising around 75 miles an hour, we're hovering around 65 to 66 decibels, pretty standard. You're not going to get fatigued driving this car on the highway based on the audio, based on the sound, the NVH, I should say. I really like the brake pedal feel. It is so just intuitive. I like that about Hondas. And now, my friends, let's hop into the new 2023 Honda HR-V. Same trim, LX, also all-wheel drive. Let's see how it compares. Into the new 2023 Honda HR-V. This is such a massive upgrade. I mean, need I even say anything? The seats, even though they're cloth, they have this really nice rectangle and square texture. This is I'm guessing this is fake leather, but it looks nice. It feels really nice. Honeycomb design, minimalist language that they're bringing across all their vehicles. I very much like it. We have HVAC with these nice lights around them. Ooh, that beautiful clicking. Tactility is nice. We have a analog speed on the right, digital on the left and in the middle. Ergonomic wise, seating position, I feel like I'm a little bit lower actually. Let's see my headspace. Headspace seems a little bit larger too, maybe by half an inch. Highly scientific, using my fingers like that. This is now based on the Honda Civic platform. It also has the 2-liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated from that Honda Civic compared to the previous gen. The car is, I believe, 9 inches longer, 2 inches wider, longer wheelbase, wider track width. Overall, it's grown up, boys. And it drives, I mean, even in the parking lot right now, it drives a little bit smoother. It already feels a lot less budget with the inputs. Need to put a lot more weight into the throttle, push harder into the throttle to get the car moving compared to the previous generation. Not as touchy of a throttle. Steering has a similar weight. Again, nice, easy to modulate brakes, which I like. Much quieter driving around. Yeah, definitely much quieter. I really like the greenhouse in a lot of Honda's newer vehicles. These A-pillars are not as thick as you would expect. And as a result, you have a great deal of visibility. Interesting side mirror shape there. You have the little cutout on the side, possibly for aerodynamics or wind noise. This car is about 200 pounds heavier than the previous generation, 3,270-ish pounds in the all-wheel drive configuration. Previous generation was closer to 3,000. But this feels much, it feels softer, and it feels like it has more heft to it. It feels like a heavier, more substantial car. And part of that is even the slower, more heavy inputs, right? I need to push harder on the gas, on the throttle to get it going. Not as big of a fan of this steering wheel material, this texture. I think that because this is the LX, it doesn't have the nicer, softer touch, leathery feel that you get with like the Sport and the EX. I was driving a Honda Civic Sport earlier that had a nicer feeling steering wheel. Now the display here, it does feel a little bit dated already, because as much as I love these tactile audio, volume controls, that's fantastic. I think we need more physical buttons. The bezels, like the left and right bezels, just unnecessarily chunky, too thick. I do think this cutout right over here is a nice little touch. Gives it a unique interior design element. Although I wish that this gear selector was a little bit further to the left like they have it in the Civic. I think that's a nice ergonomic touch that makes it a little bit easier to use. Power! There are no paddle shifters. Yeah, this does feel quite sluggish. And you have to remember, this car is a few hundred pounds heavier than the Honda Civic, but it has the same engine and transmission, so that is expected. Also has a higher center of gravity. So let's see how it handles some of these turns that are coming up. But you got HRV. Definitely feels more planted than the first one. The prior generation, possibly because it's based on the Honda Fit platform, that could be why it doesn't handle its weight as well, and it feels like almost like a toy vehicle. Whereas this, longer wheelbase, a little bit more stable, a little bit heavier based on the Civic platform, so it's not as much out of water, if you will. Nice brake pedal feel. Again, for a non-sports car, I think that Honda's inputs are just really well done. Very easy to modulate that brake pedal. And similar to the prior generation, we have no steering feel. But this definitely has a sharper turn in. And it feels a little bit more precise with the steering. Granted, that one did have a few tens of thousands of miles on it, whereas this one is pretty new. The suspension is quite comfortable, compliant, and yet I'm not getting as much nosedive when I'm braking compared to the previous gen. So better body control than the first gen, or I should say second gen, the previous gen, because this is the third gen. Yeah, this car just feels much more planted, much more secure. And I do think a large part of that is the longer wheelbase and that Honda Civic versus Honda Fit platform. Let's get this back into normal drive mode and test the audio level once we get up to speed. And at 75, we're hitting right around 65 decibels. Similar to the previous gen, I'm hearing more wind right around the side view mirrors, and I wonder if that is actually because it's windier right now. Because the car otherwise feels much more quiet driving around town. Unlike the Honda Civic, we do not have any paddle shifters in this, and I'm wondering if in the higher trims you do get that. But I do think it's a nice touch just to kind of, occasionally if you want to change the power band as you're getting ready to overtake and whatnot. That helps to expedite the process, give you a little bit more control. But Honda CVTs, they're generally pretty reasonably tuned. They're not nearly as frustrating as some other brands. This feels like a very big step, almost like a entirely different vehicle class. And it's the CRV-ization of the HRV. It's taking a big step in that direction. They still have the CRV, of course, but this car is now larger, more refined, more comfortable. Nicer cabin to be in, absolutely. You don't feel like you're getting punished every time you drive it. Now, real quick, before we go and compare both of these cars in terms of the interior cargo and all that stuff, I will say that the ride quality on this is a little bit stiffer sprung than I would expect. So it's still comfortable, and I think a large part of its good body control is because it's stiffer, right? Because it's higher center of gravity, and it will have more body roll and such unless they stiffen things up. So good body control, but it might be a little bit more rigid than you would initially expect. So in terms of cargo space, this is the new gen. This is the previous gen. As you can see, quite a bit larger. I don't have the exact cubic footage, but I think visually seeing it gives a better idea than quoting some numbers that are hard for us to visualize anyways, if we have meaning to. Now, when I sit back here, I'm 6'1". I'm actually gonna sit behind myself on that driver's side, show you what that feels like. 6'1", but mostly in the legs. Have about, let's say, 2.5 inches. Good amount of rear seat room. Plenty of space back here. These fold up 60/40. Just like that. And essentially flat. In terms of the actual load floor, this is a couple inches higher than my knee, so decently low, but definitely higher than this. Let's see how I fit behind myself. Yeah, definitely a more claustrophobic vehicle. I have slightly less headroom, but not a problem at all. Legroom here is still pretty decent. I feel pretty cramped though. I feel like the lateral space is significantly reduced. These seats the back is a lot lower. It feels like a miniature version of the new gen. And similarly, we have a 60/40 folding rear, although it looks like you need to give a little bit of clearance by moving these front seats up to get these to fold flat. And there you have it. Second gen 2018 Honda HR-V. Third gen 2023 Honda HR-V LX all-wheel drive on both vehicles. Hope you enjoyed this video, my friends. Hope it was useful. Much love, and I'll see you guys in that next one.